Good morning, everybody. Hello, welcome. So great to see so many folks here for this event today. Pastor Kurt is unable to be here at the moment, so we're going to get started. And before April comes up, we should probably open in prayer for this, so if you'll pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this incredible, wonderful day here in Naples. Thank you for my incredible Naples Community Church family. Thank you for this facility. Thank you for the people that you have brought here. Thank you for the folks that are online right now. Lord, I ask that your presence would be so felt here today. I pray that you would bring to remembrance everything that you have put on Sonia and Gordon's heart today to share with us, as we are so fortunate to have them as part of our family together. And Lord, I just know we are going to be blessed for being here, and I ask your blessing on everything that is done and said here today. In Jesus' name, amen. So, April.
Good morning. So glad to see everybody here this morning. Well, that's so kind of you. I'm one fan. So I'm so excited we have Gordon and Sonia this morning as we have navigated some of this stuff here at Naples Community Church, where we were not offering fellowship hour for a while. We were talking with Sonia and Gordon probably in January about doing a member spotlight event, and we decided to wait until fellowship hour was reinstituted by the board, which we all know has been, because we've been enjoying cookies and coffee every Sunday. And so they were gracious enough to give us some ideas and things that they wanted to share about their lives. And we, Kurt and John and I, went over to their house and watched this interview video of Sonia back, what year was that probably? Before I was born, they said. But so it gives a great overview of their journey with Peninsula Farms, and it's about 25 minutes. So we're going to watch the youthful Sonia being interviewed by a news station in Canada, and then afterwards they're going to come up, share a little bit more. They're going to share, they have brought a cookbook for everybody this morning, a Peninsula Farm cookbook, which is in the back, and we're going to have a question and answer. So Dawn's going to go through, and if you have any questions about their life, about what they've accomplished, about challenges they faced, that would be the time to do that after the video. So Billy's going to put the video up, and enjoy watching Sonia.
It's a long way from the hot pavements of New York City to the blissful blue waters of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. But that's the journey that Sonia and Gordon Jones made in 1972. They had no idea it would result in the building of a multi-million-dollar yogurt industry known as Peninsula Farm. And it all began with a cow called Daisy.
We bought this farm when we came to Nova Scotia because it had half a mile of ocean frontage. And Gordon wanted this ocean frontage so that he could go sailing and have his own boat and his own dock and his own boathouse. But we didn't think that a farm needed to be tended. We thought grass sort of took care of itself. So one day the neighbors came over to us and asked us what we intended to do with the farm. And we said, oh, don't worry. We don't intend to interfere with it in any way. We really appreciate nature, and we're going to leave it exactly as it is. So the neighbor sort of smoked his pipe a little bit. He looked at Gordon and he said, you know, Gordon, you're going to have to get some critters to gnaw off the land, or it'll go back to alderbush. Well, Gordon didn't know what he meant by critters. The only critters we'd ever heard of were cockroaches back in New York. But it turned out that he meant beef cattle. So we went to an auction with him, and we got these beef cattle, and we let them out on the grass. And they knew exactly what to do. We didn't have to teach them how to gnaw off the land. And they didn't even seem to be homesick or anything. They felt as though they had lived there all their lives. So we just leaned on the fence and thought, boy, it's really a piece of cake to be a farmer. So when winter came, we had to put all those critters in the barn. And we soon learned that each one of them provided his or her own weight in manure every 2 weeks. And we only had one wheelbarrow and 2 shovels. So by the end of the first winter, Gordon's manure pile was the highest point in Lunenburg County. But after we had shoveled all this manure for 2 or 3 years, taking care of the beef cattle, we decided that we might as well get a milk cow. And we were told that Jerseys give less milk than Holsteins, which of course is true, but they give a lot more than 4 people can possibly drink all by themselves. And we called her Daisy, and she gave 20 quarts of milk a day, and that was more than we knew what to do with. So I started making yogurt for a friend of mine who owned a health food store.
So how did you get from taking your yogurt into town to give to your health food store friend to becoming this multi-million-dollar company?
Well, that, I think, occurred on a particular day when a Mercedes-Benz drove up to our farmhouse, and this man got out of the car and looked around and seemed rather lost. So Gordon got off his manure spreader and approached this man and asked him if he could help him, and the man said, yes, I'm looking for a new yogurt factory, no, a new dairy plant that they put up here in Lunenburg somewhere. And Gordon said, there's no dairy plant in Lunenburg. I've lived here for a few years and I'd know about it if there was one. And he said, yes, but somebody's making yogurt around here and they sent me to your farm. And so Gordon said, oh, you're looking for yogurt? Well, come with me. And he took the man into the kitchen where I was making yogurt on the kitchen stove at the time. And he said, he just introduced him as somebody who was looking for some yogurt. So I said, oh, you're very lucky because I have 6 extra containers in the refrigerator today. And so the man looked around the kitchen and said, well, I can see your production facilities are somewhat limited. I was looking more in terms for a truckload. I said, a truckload? Well, how big a truckload? And he said, well, my name is David Sobey, and I own a few stores here in the province, and I was hoping you could help me out. So I said, but I'm just a humble housewife in my kitchen, and I only have 1 cow. How can I help you out? And he said, well, don't turn me down too quickly, because after all, my grandfather started out with only 1 store, but little by little, he built up, you know, what is now Sobey's today. So he said, how about if you can see your way clear to getting another cow, I'll call the manager of the store that's whose customers are making the biggest fuss, who all want your yogurt. And when you're ready for a 3rd cow, I'll call the 2nd manager. When you're ready for a 4th cow, I'll tell the 3rd manager of the store, another store, that you're coming. So do you think you can grow that way? It wouldn't be really too onerous, I should think. And so I said, well, I don't know. And Gordon said, you got a deal. Shook his hand. So from that day on, we started making yogurt for as many Sobey stores as we could.
How many different flavors do you have?
9.
9?
Yeah.
And is this a multi-million-dollar industry or $1 million industry?
We sell about $2.5 million worth of yogurt per year. So I guess you could call it a multi-million-dollar industry.
So you really make an appreciable difference to the Nova Scotia economy.
Yep, we do. We have 21% of the market share right now, but there are about 5 or 6 different brands on the shelves, and we have the 2nd highest market share in the province.
This is absolutely gorgeous country we're driving through. Does this feel like home to you now?
Yes, we've been here now for a little over 20 years, and I don't find myself missing the hot asphalt pavements in New York at all.
What do you feel is the contribution you've made to this province, other than the obvious one of providing some
jobs.
work? Yeah.
Well, we buy a lot of ingredients and products from this province.
Have you turned Nova Scotians on to yogurt? Were they yogurt eaters before you arrived?
No, they weren't. Not really. People hadn't even heard of yogurt. Sometimes people thought it was something you did standing on your head.
What's being produced now, Sonia?
Now they're producing 500-gram cherry yogurt, fresh yogurt, not frozen yogurt this time.
It's looking very soft.
Yes, when it's at this temperature, which is about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, it is quite soft. It's about the consistency of a milkshake, more or less. But when it gets cooled completely in the cooler, then it acquires the consistency that you're used to, and it's the kind that you can eat with a spoon. That's what you get in the store.
You lose some of them along the way, I see.
Yeah, unfortunately. I always hate that. I hate any kind of waste, but it's inevitable.
Are they Nova Scotia cherries?
I believe those cherries come from Michigan, but we buy our fruit from all over the world when it's not grown in Nova Scotia.
I just find it mesmerizing to watch this process. I guess you're quite blasé about it now.
Yes, there was a time though, then we did fill those containers by hand, of course, yeah. With a soup ladle.
Peninsula Farm in Lunenburg to Dalhousie University in Halifax, but they're worlds apart. Whether she's running the yogurt business or chairing the Spanish department at the university, Sonia Jones has achieved success in both worlds. You're such a prolific person, though, and so creative in so many aspects of your life. Where does the inspiration come from if it isn't from nature?
Oh, perhaps in some ways it comes from my father, who was very creative in his own way. He was also an entrepreneur, though. But I think that actually in the business world, the entrepreneurs are probably the most creative of all, because they're the ones that have the ideas and figure out the new directions. And I think it was my dad who always inspired me to reach for the stars. So.
Did he live to see the day when Peninsula Farms was born?
No, unfortunately he died when I was only 23. And that was because he lost his company. He was one of the founding members of Technicolor Films, the first company to make films in color.
So what stage were you at in your career when your father died?
Well, I hadn't even gone to Harvard yet, so all he knew was that I was a university student and that I wanted to be a writer. I knew that ever since 5th grade, so.
In looking at your life, it just seems as if it's been one success after another, after another, after another. It looks quite daunting. Have you had failures?
I don't think so. I can't recall any. This is terrible.
I think it's quite wonderful.
It seems so shockingly unhumble. I feel embarrassed. I've never really thought of things in that light, but...
What's so interesting, what seems so amazing is that you obviously never got caught up in sexist stereotyping. Why not?
I think probably because my father, who had 4 daughters and 2 sons, always took it for granted that his daughters were going to become something, a little more than something. He wanted us to go right to the top of whatever it was we chose to be. And so I feel that it never really occurred to us that we would do anything less than our very best and try our very hardest in order to achieve the ideals that he had set for us. And that sort of limited us to being geniuses as far as he was concerned. He wanted, if we were interested in art, then we had to be Dali. If we were interested in writing, then we had to be Balzac or Galdós or Dickens or nothing but the very top was. So I think in a way we grew up feeling a little bit worried that we would never succeed in pleasing him as much as we hoped. And that always was like the gadfly that drove us on.
Sonia, this looks like a very young you and a very young Gordon. Where were you?
We were in Japan in that picture in 1970 when we first got married. And then this is a number of years later on Peninsula Farm when Gordon had time to go fishing. And
He looks very satisfied.
Yeah, he's very proud of that codfish he caught.
Is this you?
Yes, that's when I graduated from high school.
And this woman is absolutely beautiful.
Yes, that's my mother. She was married probably a few years at that time. She must have been in her 20s, I would guess. I regret that I wasn't closer to my mother. She was a very sweet and kind and gentle person. And I tended to overlook her, I think, in chasing after my father's ideals. I wish I could tell her how sorry I was not to have been closer to her and not to have given her more joy as her child. Because my daughters already give me more joy than I think I gave my mother. Because I think I was probably a lot more driven at that time, and maybe more selfish and more goal-oriented, and didn't have time for others as much then as I would have liked to now, looking back on it.
Did religion play a role in your early life?
No, not in my early life. In fact, I think if I had ever shown any interest in religion, my father would have been deeply disappointed because he was quite a cynical, very witty fellow. And I think he would have thought that it was very unsophisticated and perhaps mentally unsound, or at least intellectually unsound, to believe in a deity. Or I think he felt that, in a sense, Christians, for example, were people who simply needed crutches because they were weak in some way. And so I would never have wanted to seem weak in his eyes. So the question of religion never came up till long after he died.
Well, you're obviously somebody who's never needed a crutch, but you have come to Christianity. How did this come to be?
Well, I was all my life I was interested in the fundamental questions of who we are and why we're here and where we're going and whether there could be a deity, whether life makes sense or whether it's meaningless, if there's a purpose to anything. These are questions that we ask ourselves, I think, and we all try to find our own answers to these questions. And I looked at a good number of religions along the way, but it was really our older daughter Valerie who brought Christianity close to home. When she went to Dalhousie, she met up with some Christian students called navigators. And so she became a Christian eventually through her friendship with these people and through the studies of the Bible. And when she made that commitment, the first thing she did was run home and tell Gordon and me all about it. And she wanted us to start studying the Bible. And we thought, oh my, I don't know, it's a lot to commit to right now, and we have yogurt incubating after all. But we did do that because she seemed, tremendously eager for us to give it some serious thought. So I went to our local Christian bookstore. I sneaked inside hoping nobody would notice that I was there, and I wondered, if I ask some terribly basic questions, I'm sure the people in the bookstore are going to be shocked that here's this woman that knows nothing at all. But I did ask for help in finding some kind of basic book about Christianity, and they said, oh, we have a whole section of basic books on Christianity. And she took me over to that section, and I found a book called Basic Christianity by a man called John Stott. And I thought, well, now, who is this fellow? I wonder if he is a sensible man. Is he intellectually acceptable, or is he just some strange person who really doesn't know what he's talking about? So I read the flyleaf, and it turned out that he was the advisor to the Queen. Well, since I was born in England, I thought, well, any advisor to the Queen should be good enough for me. So I started reading this book, and he presented the whole question of Christianity so clearly and so succinctly that it really appealed to me, not only intellectually, but it also moved my heart a great deal. I decided that the true God is the God who loves us, not the God who's a mathematical formula, not the God who's so far above us that we can't even understand him, but the God who loves us.
But how does an intellectual come to terms with God? Did you feel as if you had to turn off part of your brain in order to take this leap of faith?
No, I don't think so. I think that what I really did was not turn off my brain so much as open my heart for the first time. And I think we neglect our hearts in the Western world very often in favor of developing our intellects at our universities and through our education. But we don't realize, maybe until later in life, how deeply we have neglected our hearts and our souls and our emotions and our feelings sometimes until moments like these arrive.
How did becoming a Christian transform you?
Well, some of my friends were scared to death. They said, are you going to stop being an entrepreneur now? Are you going to become meek and mild and let people walk all over you? But that's not what happens. I don't think your basic personality changes at all. In fact, I think God made us all very, very different. Everyone is unique, and everyone has his or her own personality that God cherishes and is really delighted by. So I don't think it changed me as far as my personality is concerned, but I think it changed my outlook probably, and also helped me to understand where I was going.
What do you mean it changed your outlook? What way?
It made me realize that life wasn't meaningless after all. Whereas when I was growing up, especially when my father was alive, he was convinced that life was totally meaningless and that we should all develop the courage to accept that truth and run with it and turn our backs on the sadness or the melancholy that such a truth might implant in our hearts. So I think I understood at last where home is. And I think our purpose, largely, for being on this earth is to find out at least which direction home is and how to get there. A little bit like E.T. We at least want to phone home and preferably even get there someday, because that's where our hearts are.
Sonia Jones excels at everything she tries. A graduate of some of the world's best universities, the Sorbonne, Harvard, she's climbed the ivory towers of academia. She's also a skilled entrepreneur and enjoys a satisfying family life. How did you meet your husband, Gordon?
Well, since we were in the same office, we became friends, and I was most impressed by the fact that he would always crumple up his old paper and throw it into my wastebasket, which was next to my desk. He loved basketball as a boy, and he never missed, and I was very impressed by that. I think I fell in love with him because he was able to make all those shots into my wastebasket. But that's what started our friendship, and it went on from there for 13 years before we finally got married.
Well, it must have survived a long time because you went on to much longer stints of time in university.
That's right. I really didn't want to stop all my education and get married because my father was very much against early marriage and felt that it interfered with a woman's progress. But we were both very determined to get ourselves launched before we ever even thought about having a family.
And he built up a successful business in New York and then sold it in order to come with you to Nova Scotia, where you took on a professorship at Dalhousie University. Was this a big sacrifice for him?
It came at a time in his life when he really did want to make a change anyway. He had been, he had run his own management consulting firm for 13 years, and he had gotten to the point where he had succeeded so well that he was no longer an entrepreneur. He was a manager running a smoothly run operation, and he was beginning to lose interest because he wasn't any longer able to be who he wanted to be. Entrepreneurs like starting businesses almost more than they like running successful businesses.
But this was 1972, and in those days it really was a rare relationship when a man gave up his job and went with a woman to her job. You were really pioneers, weren't you?
That's true. And in fact, I think most of Gordon's friends were really horrified. They warned him that if he did this, it might ruin our marriage because in a way we were changing roles. And they said, Gordon, you know, you're going to be tied to her apron strings and she's going to have this great job as the chairman of the Spanish department at Dalhousie, and you're going to be home taking care of kids. And you're not going to like it very long. You might enjoy it at first when it's new, but you're going to get tired of it and you're going to feel that you've lost status and dignity. But Gordon listened, you know, quite politely to them, but I think he had enough confidence in his own personality and in his own heart to dare to try this outrageous experiment. And he landed on his feet.
It's clear from reading your book and seeing you and Gordon together that yours is very much an egalitarian relationship. And that must have really been a plus in the development of your business. How did you work things out in terms of who was going to do what?
We were fortunate in that we didn't have the same talents and the same interests. So we divided up the work according to our likes and dislikes, and it worked out really well. We put so much money into ingredients, and people don't realize it, that they're getting more for their money by buying a quality product like ours than they are by buying a product which has been watered down, almost literally, with things that stretch it and make it cheaper to manufacture. If we were to ask a just price for our labor and get a profit commensurate with the profit that large multinationals enjoy, we would never sell any yogurt at all. It would be just priced out of the market. It all started out with me being entirely involved with everything. I used to make all the deliveries in the truck. I opened up the market in all the stores, and I was involved in the production and certainly in the product development. But now we have 42 employees. I don't have to be involved in such a hands-on way on an everyday basis. But the one thing I have still kept completely in my own control is product development. The tippet topping, for example, is something that I developed in my kitchen. I just happen to have a nice little sample in my fridge. And it's a new concept for Canada. Canada has never had a package like this, which is divided in two. In one side you have the yogurt, and in the other side you have the topping.
Is it for freshness that you have them separated?
Partly. It's certainly there's no doubt about it that the fruit remains fresher if it's kept separate from the yogurt. But one of the other reasons that we love to keep the fruit portion separate from the yogurt is that when the fruit is all stirred into the yogurt, it's harder for the average customer to distinguish the excellence of the fruit when it's masked by the yogurt flavor. I probably stayed in academia altogether too long, but now that I've left, I'm free to write the kind of books that I've always yearned to write. The first of which really was It All Began with Daisy. It was the first book I've ever written that normal people can find in normal bookstores and buy and take home and enjoy. And I want to write more of that kind of book.
It All Began with Daisy chronicles the birthing of a yogurt empire. Translated into 15 different languages, this book has reached more than 28 million people. Do you feel that coming to Nova Scotia and building up the business as you and your husband have done has been part of a larger plan for you?
Oh, no doubt, but I would never know what that plan really is. I'm always amazed at the subtlety of God's planning and the humor and the love that is involved in his plan for his people, but we never will know until, we never understand anything except in retrospect. You know, it's 2020's hindsight. If we can understand anything at all in retrospect in this life, it's only just an example of what we'll understand later when we're no longer looking through a glass darkly.
Can Gordon and Sonia come up, please? I know we all enjoyed hearing their story. I think Billy is unmuting your mics.
Oh, okay.
So you're good. Yeah?
Okay.
Sonia? So what I'd like to do is have them fill in some of the blanks or things that they have, that as you watch this, things that you want to share about your life that might not have been covered in the video. And then once you feel you've said what you want to say, Dawn has a roaming mic and we'll go around and ask questions and get more information and get to know you even better. So this is all for you now, all about you.
Okay. Thanks very much, April. It's really nice of you to start all this, because I've always thought the badges only go so far. And, you know, being elderly, as most of us are, we don't remember our friends' names even, because we've never really had any contact other than with a badge on. So I'm very happy that we can get to be the first of what I hope will be many, because we'd like to know about your backgrounds just as you know about ours now. Okay, you got anything to add, Mom?
Nothing comes to mind at once. Perhaps questions would be...
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No, I am giving my speech.
Oh, you go ahead, you go ahead.
Well, my speech is really... Can you hold it just till I finish? He wants to shut me up already. I haven't even started. Well, I think if I had to think of a definition of what this picture was about and what our lives have been about, it could come down to one word, and that's irony. Because everything that I thought I was going to be and everything that I turned out to be completely different. So I think that God himself must have a really big sense of humor. Because how could you be born and raised in Brooklyn, as I was, and become a farmer? It's a pretty big transition. I mean, we never had any grass, let alone cows. So that was quite a step. And it keeps going on from there. I mean, how would I ever get to meet a linguistics professor from Harvard if God didn't take her and sit her down in our business next to me? I mean, it was special delivery from God. I don't know if any of you have had one, but that was mine. And so Sonia and I have had a long, productive life, and we just have one irony after the next. And I'm so glad that God has a sense of humor. And we mustn't forget that. And I know April likes that path. She likes to have fun. Even naming her new group there with the 3 Fs. I'm glad she didn't make it 4 Fs, otherwise a lot of us guys would probably have not qualified. Anyway, do you want to add anything, Mama?
Well, actually, I was delighted to see that movie because it brought back a lot of things that I had sort of forgotten over time. And I was happy to see that when we were young and strong and able, we could do a lot more than what we do these days. But when you get older, you have a new perspective of things. And so that's also an interesting development in life, because seeing this movie again, I saw it from a different angle, and it would take me too long to even clear up in my own mind what that angle was, but you can probably all imagine that when you are older, you see things differently from your teenage children, and that probably leads to lots of discussions at home, and the children are probably not willing to accept your view of life, and of course you are not totally willing to accept theirs either, because you can see the difficulties that are lying over the horizon with their ideas as to what they want to do with their lives. So it makes it difficult, and seeing this video again was really very enjoyable for me, because there are details, of course, in life that you forget, and it's wonderful that we were so fortunate as to have had enough success in one of Canada's smallest provinces, Nova Scotia, to merit the attention of the publicity folks in Nova Scotia, because I cherish this movie, if you could call it that, or of our work that we did in Nova Scotia, because it all comes back to me very clearly, and I never thought I would remember it as well as I do now that I've seen that movie a couple of times. So I'm very grateful that they took the time and trouble to make that movie. And I hope that somebody will make movies of your lives too, because I'm sure everybody has a life that is very valuable and very interesting, and maybe that will give you some thought about, if not getting somebody to make a movie of your life, that's a little bit difficult. But if you write a book about your life, you may not be too sorry to have done so, because when your children at least grow up, they will probably enjoy seeing what made you what you are and what influence you had on them and why they became who they were. I wish you great luck. It's much easier, I think, to write a book than people realize. And so that's why people probably don't make the effort to do so, because they're afraid they can't. But the truth is you really can. And
It's convenient to have a publisher.
right, that's very convenient indeed. But it's a joy for us to see how we felt way back then. I didn't really remember all the details that we were talking about, and I'm thrilled to have some kind of...
That's why we had a happy marriage, because I remember everything. You would remember everything too if you faced the world with a shovel and a wheelbarrow and that was all you had.
Yeah. Well, life is always a big surprise, I think. Probably everybody in this room can tell us something that life did that was very surprising to you and which changed your direction in some way.
Look around and find the ironies. They're everywhere.
Yes, hiding under every chair, I'm sure. Are there any questions that we can field for you,
Okay,
perhaps?
Dawn, I'll do some on the side, and Dawn will manage questions over there. How about that?
Okay.
Okay. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that as the daughter of two entrepreneurs, this is my mom, and this is my dad. And I was not featured at all in this video, which, from my perspective, was a loss.
Shocking.
But I was also really interested to see that you guys had a multi-million-dollar company, because growing up, they got me my clothes at the Salvation Army. When I wanted my first Whitney Houston, I guess at the time it would have been tape, they said, well, how are you going to earn the money to get that? And I thought, well, I don't know. They said, you know, you're really good at making cookies. Your chocolate chip cookies are the best chocolate chip cookies we've ever had. Why don't you make a whole bunch of chocolate chip cookies and sell them to everybody who works on the farm and the factory, and when you get enough money, you can buy yourself a Whitney Houston CD or tape. So that was my introduction. I didn't know we were a multi-million-dollar company, but I did know that we worked hard, and I'm really proud of you guys.
Oh, we're proud of you too.
Vicky's Cookies.
My cookies are still the best. They don't make me any money, but that's okay.
We don't have
That was my only question.
And they flew down all the way from Michigan, by the way, to be here today.
Well, I thank you very much, Gordon and Sonia. That was absolutely delightful to share with you, or to have you share with us. And thank you for making it happen. And I hope we do it more. I think it'd be a really great idea. So I have no more questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we're delighted to have shared it.
Here's Bruce.
Yeah, again, very, very interesting. When did, she was mentioning, Sonia was mentioning about when she met the Lord, etc. Now, when you guys first got married, were you both secular or whatever, and when did you come to the Christ?
Oh, yeah, we were both secular when we married, I would say, right?
Yep.
Well, through this whole experience of Sonia's sort of conversion, I just tagged along, and gradually, I don't have anything very dramatic. To me, becoming a Christian was like sitting in a chair in a room all alone, and suddenly smoke started to come in under the door, and raise up, and you looked down and it was raising, and the next thing I knew, I was a Christian. But it wasn't very dramatic. I did it by myself. I would say the Lord did it by himself. It's another irony, you know. So I haven't got a really dramatic conversion story to tell.
Well, believe it or not, It was the Jehovah's Witnesses who first came to our farm and visited us and started talking to us about, and you know, there was a lot in what they said that I thought made a good deal of sense. I know that people are not, they were the first people who ever talked to me about Christianity. And so maybe that has something to do with the fact that I thought pretty highly of them because they had a lot of interesting things kind of figured out. They had answers to stuff that I hadn't even thought about. And then people also began telling me, oh, don't listen to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I thought they sounded pretty good to me, but they were the first people I'd ever heard. And
The second people were the Mormons.
yes.
We didn't pay attention to them either.
But I think there's probably all kinds of truth in many people's views of Christianity, although I don't want to go down that path too far because maybe I'm completely wrong about that assumption. However, I'm very comfortable here in this church. It's my favorite church of all churches. And and Kurt is a absolutely fabulous pastor. We're very lucky to have him.
Well, he's lucky to have us, too.
Yes.
I mean, what would he have done? Because he's exposed now to the COVID, so what would he have done?
What indeed.
We would have had to do something ourselves anyway, right, to fill in for him.
Yes.
Well, anyway.
We have another question from Jack, I believe.
I have two, like the White House reporters. You can get a follow-up? Okay. Thank you, Gordon and Sonia, for sharing your story, amazing story, and thank you for the courage to stand up there. We have to do it soon, and I know it's wonderful that you are sharing yourselves with us. Thank you, April.
Well, if you all decide to buy a cow, I hope there'll be room for one somewhere in this city.
Someone offered us a cow. We could have done that. I know we could have. My question on the cow. Was the yogurt business sold off, and or does it still exist today under the same name?
No. It wasn't sold off, and it's not under the same name. It doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, it just doesn't exist, okay. And second question is a question that we like to share our answer, but I'd like to hear your answer. How did you discover Naples Community Church together?
Okay. As I recall, a neighbor in our condominium asked us to come to a Bible study that was going on. And we thought, oh, that's nice, let's go. So we went with them, and Kurt was giving that study at the time, and we liked it very much, and we said, well, we were looking for a church. And I was particularly looking because I wanted one that was within walking distance, because we don't drive anymore. So, as most of you will know, having given us lifts home at one time or another. So as we got older, it was harder to walk, and the next thing I knew was we had to depend on you guys to get us here. So anyway, as you can see, it works perfectly. We're here, and we don't have a car. And Sonia doesn't have a driver's license anymore. So, I don't know. I don't want to go on and on, but basically, this is the church. We've been in a lot of them over the years in different places. And there's something about this church. Not much woo-woo, which is good for us. And, you know, but it's, Kurt's great. He's a really good man. And we all love him. Okay, question. Yes, Faulkner.
Gordon, you and Sonia, could you share some of the interesting problem-solving things you did after you got the cow? I think I've read that in the book, and I think we really appreciate how you took something that was a problem and found a solution.
Yeah, that's the irony that I ever found a solution at all. That's the biggest irony. Well, anyway, I don't know, what can I say about that? You know, my education and my background is pretty well practical, engineering side, that type of thing. And, you know, I never thought I was going to build a dairy plant, but I did it. And, you know, it's not as though I have any particular knowledge along those lines, but you try something, it works, it doesn't work, you try something else until you finally get something. We never, you know, we did something that I think is really hard, and that's walk away from a lot of opportunities because they would take us to places we didn't want to go, and no matter how much money they poured into it, like for instance, people came to us from Alberta, which was really big because of the oil business out there. They wanted us to set up a yogurt plant someplace between Edmonton and Calgary, where the population there is much greater. It's, you know, the church could easily service both places. There was 1,000 reasons why it would have been good, and it would have helped us move, you know, which would have been expensive. But we didn't do it because we liked where we lived. And sometimes you have to turn down the big bucks, I guess, to be happy. And I'll turn them down every time to be happy, believe me. Because sometimes you get, when money runs your life, you know, that's a different story. And we didn't have that story, we were lucky. But we still were independent, which is also another thing that's really good. We didn't have to depend on anybody, whether we wanted to make another flavor. Sonia's very creative. She did the product design on every product that ever moved in our plant. And I just had to figure out how to get it into containers in the right measurements. Well, some of you can appreciate that might be more of a problem than you thought until you try to do it. And, you know, we bought our equipment everywhere. We paid for a lot of research that we did. I think they still remember us in Heathrow Airport in London when we arrived with our blueberries, where we were taking them to Ireland to get them exploded. You say, what in the world would people do? Well, anyway, we had these frozen blueberries that came along with us on the plane, and we were on the end of the line there for our baggage to come, and along comes the blueberries, and they had spilled out of the container, and they were all over the place. But we were able to salvage a few, and we did then take them to Ireland, and we found out that the problem with exploding your blueberries is that they were like shrapnel when they got in the yogurt, and all the bits and pieces were tough, you know, and people, they were getting their teeth, and that was out. So we never did that, but we did leave the blueberry stains all over the thing in Heathrow, or whatever you call it, the baggage. I mean, little things like that. I could tell stories like that for hours, but you make me hungry.
Do we have any other questions? Any other questions in the house?
Well,
One in the back here.
Does anybody still make yogurt where they separate the fruit from the yogurt that you know of?
Not that I know of anymore, no.
Yes.
There was some. Is there?
Very unique.
I don't know if it's Dannon or the
Dannon.
or something.
Yeah. Well, in Canada, because of a lot of political situations, the milk business is pretty well centered in Quebec. And they control the Milk Marketing Board, and the concept of keeping the production in line with the sales. There always was a problem that the farmers would produce too much milk, it was perishable, and first thing you know, they were going to go broke, and it was going to be a nightmare, and on and on. So they had to control the amount of product that was made. And boy, they loved that in Quebec. In fact, when we moved to Canada from New York, and we were practically hadn't unpacked our bags when Quebec and the people in Quebec had this election about they were going to leave Canada. I said, well, we came up here because we thought it would be nice. Sonia spoke French, and she you know, it was going to be kind of a little adventure, you know, Europe without traveling. So it was a nightmare to believe that these people in Quebec wanted us to secede from Canada. The minute we got there, you'd almost think they knew how bad we were. And anyway, that was a story that, another irony. I mean, you know, we went to Canada because they had French and that influence and it was going to be good for Sonia. And there you go. The first thing you know, the Frenchmen wanted to leave. But they, by one vote, I mean, it was like 51 to 50 or 51 to 49, whatever you call it, when they took this plebiscite, they remained in Canada by 1 point. It's kind of like our Congress these days, you know, it's so close. You know, you'd wonder how they could have done it. Anyway, the Prime Minister kept them in Canada, and they're in Canada now still. Okay, you want us to?
Are you feeling like you have anything you want to say, Sonia, to tie up all loose ends? And I know we've got a lovely lunch in the back here, and they're going to be back. They've got, as I said, cookbooks on that back cabinet, which everyone is welcome to take one. Do you want to talk a little bit about the cookbook? How you came about doing this?
I guess mainly because it was writing books about our company was always a good way of advertising it. And the more you advertise a company, the more product you sell, and that was a good idea, I suppose. So
I was telling some people before we started that there's another university in Halifax called Mount St. Vincent's, and they have a hospitality course, and they were training people to do work in hotels, restaurants, and so forth. And they had a test kitchen there. So Sonia sent them over her recipes, and they were all tested by these kids in Mount St. Vincent University in Halifax. So I suggest that you do the yogurt pancakes. They are superb.
Well, thank you to both Gordon and Sonia. If we could close with a prayer. And I would love if everyone would come to the front afterwards and I can get a picture of Sonia and Gordon with everyone around them. That would be really nice for us to have. So if you'd like to stand, we'll close with a quick prayer, and then we'll come to the front and then have some nice lunch at the end. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for Gordon and Sonia. Thank you for them blessing us with their lives here at Naples Community Church, for sharing this beautiful interview with us. Thank you for their daughter and her family that came all the way from Michigan to celebrate with them a great lived life. And thank you for touching them and sharing their faith with us today. We ask all this in your name. Amen.
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 Come up to the front and grab a quick picture, and then we'll have some lunch.
Okay. All right, Joe.
Oh, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
All right.
All together, is that what you said?
She wants us all.
Two or three at a time, or what?
All together, I think.
Okay, I'm ready. Nice job.
Thank you. Good, Vicky.
Any other family here with you?
Yes, our daughter. Oh, that.
Grandchildren, son-in-law.
Are they here? Well, they don't get them up here.
Come in front of here.
Yeah, where are your?
Oh, but go in front.
Come in front of the podium, and then if everyone could move forward and squeeze in.
Where are the kids?
Yeah,
Oh,
coming.
good.
They're going to be right here.
Like I'm a photographer now, not really, but we'll pretend.
okay.
We've got. Oops, I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, we're missing two people. We're missing two, and we can get the live stream. We also have a live stream picture, so everyone can get in. So you guys come on up through.